Have you ever wondered what secrets about consciousness and healing were revealed in the final whispers of one of the most profound spiritual teachers of the 20th century? What if the key to unlocking your true spiritual potential has been hiding in plain sight all along? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. In the quiet moments of his transition from this world, Joel Goldsmith shared revelations so profound, so contradictory to traditional religious teachings, that they would fundamentally transform how we understand spiritual healing and consciousness itself. Has this ever happened to you? You study spiritual principles for years, practice all the right techniques, yet still feel something essential is missing from your practice. Joel's journey wasn't just about learning more spiritual concepts. It was about discovering how consciousness itself becomes the healing force that dissolves all limitation instantly. After decades of helping thousands through spiritual healing, writing revolutionary books, and studying with mystics, something remained hidden from Joel until those precious final moments when clarity struck like lightning through his awareness. What Joel realized in those sacred final days contradicts everything that conventional religion and even modern spirituality teaches. It goes beyond positive thinking, beyond prayer as most know it, beyond visualization and affirmation techniques. Stay with me until the end, because this revelation isn't just another spiritual philosophy. It's the master key that makes every other practice work effortlessly. The fundamental principle that anchored Joel's teachings was deceptively simple. I of myself can do nothing. The Father within doeth the works. Many spiritual seekers have heard this phrase, nodded in agreement, and then continued struggling with the same problems and limitations. What you're about to discover might surprise you, because Joel's final breakthrough wasn't just understanding this principle intellectually, but discovering how to activate it instantly in your life. Most of us approach spirituality like a cosmic vending machine. Insert enough prayer, meditation, and positive thinking, and eventually receive healing, abundance, and happiness. But what if everything we've been taught about spiritual transformation is backward? What if the very effort to become more spiritual is precisely what blocks true transformation from happening? Joel discovered that most seekers, including himself for many years, were trying to use consciousness to get something from God. They were approaching the spiritual path as if they were separate from divine consciousness, needing to bridge a gap that doesn't actually exist. The revelation that changed everything was the complete opposite approach, a recognition so simple that the intellectual mind dismisses it as too easy, yet so profound that it works when nothing else will. Imagine for a moment what would happen if you stopped trying to become spiritually enlightened and instead recognized that spirituality is already trying to express itself as you. This isn't about becoming anything new. It's about, if these teachings resonate with you, hit that subscribe button to join our community of seekers exploring consciousness and spiritual transformation. This isn't about becoming anything new. It's about recognizing what you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning and false identity. This recognition is the master key Joel discovered, the key that transforms every aspect of your life: health, relationships, abundance, not through struggle or effort, but through alignment with your true nature. When I first encountered this revelation in Joel's work, it felt like someone had just turned on the lights in a room where I'd been fumbling around in the dark. The hidden truth was that I'd been approaching my spiritual journey completely backward. Perhaps you've experienced this too. The exhausting cycle of spiritual seeking that never quite delivers the profound transformation we hope for. Joel's breakthrough was realizing that this master key makes all other spiritual practices work effortlessly. It's not that affirmations, visualizations, or meditation techniques are wrong. It's that without this fundamental shift in perspective, they remain surface-level tools that rarely create lasting change. They're like trying to fix a computer's hardware by changing the desktop background. The profound mindset shift Joel uncovered was that most of us are approaching spirituality incorrectly. We treat consciousness like a cosmic vending machine. Insert enough prayer, meditation, and positive thinking, and eventually receive healing, abundance, and happiness. We're trying to use consciousness to get something from God, as if we're separate beings negotiating with a distant power. But the journey Joel invites us to take flips this approach completely. Instead of trying to reach out to consciousness, what if you recognize that you already are the consciousness you seek? This isn't spiritual theory. It's a practical recognition that changes how you navigate every aspect of your life. Think about the revelations that come when you stop seeing yourself as a person with problems trying to connect with God, and instead recognize yourself as the very consciousness in which all experiences, including problems, arise and dissolve naturally. This doesn't mean your challenges magically disappear, but your relationship to them transforms completely. What makes this approach so impactful is that it works, whether you believe it or not, whether you feel worthy or not, whether you understand it completely or not. Truth operates regardless of our opinions about it or our feelings of readiness. Your true nature as consciousness isn't waiting for you to become good enough to claim it. It's already what you are, waiting only for recognition. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this recognition isn't just philosophical, it's intensely practical. Joel discovered that every healing, every demonstration of abundance, every moment of deep peace comes through one simple practice. It's a practice so natural that you've been using it unconsciously your whole life, yet so powerful that when accessed deliberately, it transforms everything. Write in the comments, "I am consciousness," if this perspective shift is starting to resonate with how you view your spiritual journey. This simple practice, Joel discovered, reveals a revolutionary insight. The secret isn't about getting health or attracting abundance, but recognizing that you already are what you seek. Most spiritual approaches focus on acquisition, getting something you lack, healing something that's broken, attracting something you desire. But Joel's revelation turns this entire paradigm on its head. When you recognize that you don't need to get health because you already are perfect life expressing, you don't need to attract abundance because you already are infinite supply, the entire framework of spirituality shifts from effort to recognition. This isn't about asking, begging, demanding, or even affirming. It's about recognizing the I am that has always been present behind every problem, every lack, every fear, waiting patiently to dissolve them all through simple recognition. The breakthrough moment in your journey comes when you realize this isn't intellectual understanding. It's direct recognition of what has always been true about your essential nature. Behind the narrative of limitation is the reality of completeness, waiting only for your acknowledgement. Joel's final wisdom, whispered in what was described as the sacred silence of his transition, contains this master key that unlocks every spiritual mystery you've ever encountered. The revelation is so beautifully simple that most people miss it entirely. Stop trying to be spiritual and recognize that spirituality is trying to be you. The mindset shift here is profound. Most of us spend our lives in pursuit mode, chasing spiritual growth, development, and enlightenment as if these were achievements to be earned through discipline and practice. We approach spirituality like a mountain to be climbed through effort and perseverance. But what if the summit is already where you're standing? This simple recognition aligns you with what you already are. It's not about becoming anything. It's about dropping the pretense that you're anything less than the consciousness in which all experience arises. The technique is so simple that the intellectual mind rejects it as too easy, yet so profound that it works when nothing else will. Behind the scenes of your everyday awareness lies this extraordinary truth. You are not a limited human being trying to become spiritual. You are spiritual consciousness expressing as a human being. The hidden revelation isn't that you need to transform into something better, it's that you need to stop believing you're something less. This recognition creates an immediate impact because it aligns you with reality rather than with the story of separation and lack. It's not positive thinking or wishful imagination. It's seeing clearly what has always been true beneath the temporary appearances of limitation. Subscribe now to continue this journey of discovering your true nature as consciousness itself. We're exploring these profound insights that can transform your entire experience of life. Let me share how this recognition operates in real life through the stories of people who've experienced its transformative power. These aren't theoretical concepts, but lived experiences that demonstrate what happens when someone stops trying to use spirituality to fix their problems and instead recognizes their true identity as consciousness itself. Type "I recognize" in the comments if you're beginning to see how this shift from seeking to recognizing could transform your approach to spiritual growth. Let me share how this recognition manifests in real life through the stories of people who've experienced its transformative power. What's truly remarkable about Joel's final approach is its radical accessibility. Unlike complex spiritual systems that demand years of study, purification, or special qualifications, this revelation bypasses all that struggle by revealing a simple truth. You are the divine consciousness you've been seeking. Most people spend years studying spiritual texts, learning elaborate techniques, trying to purify themselves enough to deserve divine attention. The spiritual marketplace is filled with systems promising enlightenment after sufficient effort and dedication. But Joel discovered that the journey doesn't need to be so complicated. This shift in consciousness can be made by anyone without years of preparation or special qualifications. The revelation is that every person carries within them the complete solution to every problem they will ever face. Not as potential that might develop someday, but as present reality waiting to be acknowledged through a specific shift in consciousness that anyone can make regardless of their spiritual background. What makes this approach so revolutionary is that it doesn't depend on your level of faith, your spiritual development, or your worthiness. The hidden truth is that consciousness healing operates through recognition of what you already are, not through becoming something you're not yet. This is why those who appear to have no spiritual background sometimes experience more dramatic transformations than long-time seekers. They have fewer spiritual concepts blocking direct recognition. The practice involves a profound mindset shift from being the person who has the problem to being the consciousness that dissolves it. This shift works whether you believe it or not, whether you feel worthy or not, whether you understand it completely or not. Truth operates regardless of our opinions about it or our feelings of readiness. Behind the scenes of every healing is this fundamental shift in identity. When Margaret, who carried 20 years of chronic pain that no doctor could explain or heal, encountered Joel's teaching, she didn't change the pain itself. She changed her relationship to it. Within minutes of learning Joel's technique, she stopped being Margaret with pain and became pure awareness, observing an experience that couldn't touch her true nature. 3 days later, she woke without pain for the first time in decades. The profound decision she made wasn't to heal the pain, but to recognize her identity as consciousness itself. the awareness that remains forever untouched by any physical or emotional experience passing through it, like clouds through an endless sky. The pain didn't dissolve because she found a better treatment. It dissolved because she discovered who she really was beyond the story of suffering. This recognition isn't a form of spiritual bypassing or denial. It's seeing clearly what has always been true beneath temporary appearances. When Robert faced financial ruin, after his business collapsed, he didn't ignore the practical problems. He approached them from his true identity as consciousness rather than from desperation. If you've ever experienced a moment where a problem suddenly lost its grip on you without anything external changing, comment, "I felt this shift." You've already experienced this recognition, even if momentarily. Let me take you deeper into Margaret's story. For 20 years, she lived with chronic pain that defined her entire existence. She tried everything: medications that eventually stopped working, surgeries that only made things worse, alternative therapies that offered temporary relief before the pain returned even stronger. Medical specialists couldn't explain her condition, and psychology offered no lasting solution. Her identity had become completely wrapped up in being a person with chronic pain. What happened when she encountered Joel's teaching wasn't a new treatment for her pain. It was a revelation about her relationship to it. Within minutes of learning the technique, Margaret experienced a profound identity shift. The pain remained exactly the same physically, but she no longer identified herself as Margaret with pain. Instead, she recognized herself as pure awareness, observing an experience that couldn't touch her true nature. This wasn't positive thinking or denial. It was recognition of a deeper reality that had always been true, but had been obscured by her identification with suffering. 3 days later, she woke without pain for the first time in decades. The transformation wasn't just physical, but existential. She had discovered who she really was, beyond all temporary conditions. Robert's journey reveals another dimension of this practice. After losing everything in a business collapse that destroyed his reputation and left his family facing foreclosure, he was drowning in shame and desperation. He understood spiritual principles intellectually. He could quote scripture about abundance and affirm prosperity daily, but these practices remained intellectual exercises that couldn't bridge the gap to his practical reality of mounting bills and dwindling resources. The breakthrough came when Robert stopped trying to fix his circumstances from the position of a desperate person and started recognizing himself as the consciousness in which both prosperity and poverty appear as temporary experiences, neither touching his true infinite nature. This wasn't escaping into spiritual fantasy. It was seeing clearly what had always been true beneath the appearance of limitation. Within weeks, unexpected opportunities emerged seemingly from nowhere. Former clients returned with new projects. New partnerships formed naturally, but the real transformation wasn't the external circumstances. It was Robert's unshakable peace, knowing that his true identity as infinite consciousness could never be threatened by any financial condition. Revolutionary insight behind both these journeys is that they didn't become more spiritual or develop new powers through practice and discipline. They simply recognized what had always been true, but temporarily forgotten. They are the very consciousness they had been seeking to contact, please, or convince to help them with their problems. This recognition creates a profound paradigm shift in how we approach challenges. Instead of seeing problems as threats to overcome through effort, we recognize them as temporary experiences arising in consciousness, our true identity. This doesn't mean ignoring practical action, but taking that action from a completely different starting point, from wholeness rather than lack, from peace rather than desperation. Sarah's story offers yet another perspective on how this recognition transforms our relationship with emotions that seem to control our lives completely. After years of struggling with depression that medication couldn't lift and therapy couldn't permanently cure, comment, recognition shifted everything. If you've experienced a moment where seeing yourself differently transformed a situation without anything external changing, Sarah's story offers yet another perspective on how this recognition transforms our relationship with emotions that seem to control our lives completely. After years of struggling with depression that medication couldn't lift and therapy couldn't permanently cure, Sarah felt trapped in a mind she couldn't escape or heal. The depression wasn't just sadness, it was a heavy blanket of hopelessness that made simple daily activities feel overwhelming. She had tried everything: antidepressants, therapy, exercise, meditation, yet nothing provided lasting relief from the mental anguish. Her breakthrough came when she encountered Joel's teaching about consciousness recognition. Rather than fighting the depression or trying to replace negative thoughts with positive ones, Sarah learned something revolutionary. She could stop identifying with the depressed thoughts and emotions and start identifying with the awareness that observes them. This shift in perspective wasn't about escaping her feelings or denying their existence. It was about discovering her true position as the consciousness in which all mental states arise and dissolve naturally. The depression didn't vanish overnight, but Sarah's relationship to it transformed immediately. She discovered an inner stillness that no mood could disturb, the I am that exists prior to all psychological states and remains eternally free from every condition that seems to control human experience. What makes this approach so different from conventional treatments is that it doesn't try to fix what's wrong with you. Instead, it reveals what's eternally right about your true nature as consciousness itself. Sarah didn't become someone who manages depression well. She recognized herself as the awareness in which depression appears and disappears without defining her essential being. To support this recognition, Joel taught what he called the witness position, a practice of observing experiences from the unchanging center of awareness rather than being caught in them completely. This creates immediate space between you and any problem or limitation that seems to control your life. It's the difference between saying, "I am depressed," and "I notice depression appearing in consciousness." You can practice this right now. Notice that you are aware of hearing these words. You are not the words themselves, not the thoughts about them, not even the person listening to them, but the awareness in which all of these appear. This awareness is your true identity, infinite, eternal, and inherently free from every temporary condition. The witness position isn't detachment or dissociation from life. It's actually the most intimate connection possible, recognizing yourself as the very consciousness in which all experiences arise, unfold, and dissolve naturally without resistance. From this vantage point, problems don't disappear, but they lose their power to define who you are or limit your sense of possibility. This recognition creates a profound inner freedom that transcends circumstances. You're no longer at the mercy of changing conditions because your identity isn't based on conditions at all. You're the unchanging awareness in which all conditions appear, the canvas rather than the painting, the sky rather than the weather. But Joel discovered that most people encounter a predictable challenge when attempting to maintain this recognition in daily life. If you've ever experienced moments where you suddenly realized, "I am not my thoughts," or "I am not this emotion," share "I am the witness" in the comments. But Joel discovered that most people encounter a predictable challenge when attempting to maintain this recognition in daily life. We've been conditioned to identify with our thoughts and emotions for so long that we automatically slip back into that identification, especially under pressure. Joel's discovery of the timeless awareness technique offers a profound solution to this challenge. Joel taught that every problem exists only in time, while your true nature exists outside of time altogether. Think about it. Worry requires a future that hasn't happened yet. Regret requires a past that no longer exists, and both depend entirely on time-bound thinking. When you shift your identity from the time-bound person to timeless awareness, problems lose their reality and power to affect your essential being. This isn't a mental trick or positive affirmation. It's recognizing the fundamental nature of consciousness itself, eternally present outside the stream of time in which problems appear to exist. When you feel your way into this present moment so completely that past and future disappear entirely, what problem could possibly exist? What lack could be real? What fear could have any foundation when only the eternal now is present? The revolutionary insight is that this timeless awareness isn't something you need to achieve through years of meditation. It's your natural state of being, always available, always perfect, always free from every condition that seems to trouble the time-bound mind. The more you rest in this timeless awareness, the more naturally your life reflects this perfection in practical ways. To deepen this recognition, Joel developed what he called the recognition-gratitude approach, a practice that completely transforms our understanding of gratitude itself. Most approaches to gratitude focus on being thankful for what we have or hope to receive in the future. But Joel's approach was radically different, using gratitude not as a feeling or emotion, but as recognition of what already is. Instead of being thankful for what you hope to receive in the future, you become grateful for the completeness that already exists within you right now. This isn't positive thinking designed to attract good things. It's acknowledgement of the infinite supply, perfect health, and unlimited love that consciousness itself is. The profound revelation here is that you don't have these qualities as possessions. You are these qualities expressing as individual awareness. When you say, "I am grateful that I am infinite supply itself," or "I am grateful that I am perfect health itself," you're not making affirmations about what you want to become. You're acknowledging facts about your present nature. This recognition gratitude bypasses the usual spiritual trap of seeking to become what you already are. It establishes you immediately in the truth of your being and allows that truth to express naturally in your daily experience without force or struggle. The hidden truth is that gratitude isn't about thanking a power outside yourself. It's recognizing the power that you already are. Let me show you how these practices work together to establish you more firmly in the recognition of your true nature as consciousness itself. Write in the comments, "Timeless now," if you've ever experienced a moment of such complete presence that all your problems temporarily disappeared. Let me show you how these practices work together to establish you more firmly in the recognition of your true nature as consciousness itself. Even with perfect understanding of these principles, most people encounter predictable obstacles that can temporarily derail their practice. Joel faced these same challenges and developed specific insights about working with them that transformed obstacles into opportunities. The first common obstacle is doubt. The mind's insistence that this approach is too simple to work for serious problems like chronic illness, financial ruin, or deep emotional trauma. When we've been conditioned to believe that meaningful change requires struggle and effort, the simplicity of consciousness recognition can trigger skepticism. But here's the revolutionary perspective Joel discovered. Doubt is natural and doesn't disqualify you from success. Instead of fighting doubt or trying to eliminate it through positive thinking, Joel learned to welcome it as another experience arising in consciousness. When doubt appears, you can simply notice, "I am aware of doubt arising in consciousness." You are not the doubt. You are the consciousness in which doubt appears and disappears naturally like clouds in an endless sky. This insight transforms doubt from an enemy into a signpost, showing you where you're still identified with the person mind rather than resting in your true nature. Another frequent challenge is impatience with external progress. Students often abandon the practice when immediate physical or financial changes don't appear, not realizing that inner transformation always precedes outer demonstration. The breakthrough insight is understanding that consciousness shift happens instantly when recognition occurs, but its reflection in the world of form may unfold gradually according to a timeline beyond personal control. The key decision point is maintaining recognition regardless of external appearances or seeming delays. This isn't passive waiting but active recognition that you are consciousness itself, not a person waiting for consciousness to improve your circumstances. From this perspective, you already have everything, because you are everything expressed. As individual awareness, perhaps the most persistent obstacle Joel identified is the habit of returning to problem consciousness under pressure. When faced with challenging situations, we automatically revert to identifying with the person who has problems, rather than the consciousness that dissolves them. This isn't spiritual failure. It's normal human conditioning. Each return to problem consciousness becomes an opportunity to practice recognition again, deepening your journey toward consistent identification with your true nature. Joel's ultimate realization brings together all aspects of consciousness recognition into a unified understanding that transcends every limitation. He discovered that consciousness is not something you have or use like a tool, but what you are at the deepest level of being. Every problem, every limitation, every fear exists only in the mistaken belief that you are something other than pure awareness itself expressing as individual consciousness. From this recognition flows natural healing, effortless supply, and unshakable peace, not as rewards for spiritual achievement, but as the natural expression of your true nature finally recognized and lived authentically. If you've been experiencing a sense of recognition while hearing these teachings, type "I am consciousness" in the comments to affirm this truth about yourself. As we come to the close of our exploration into Joel Goldsmith's profound insights, I hope you've glimpsed the revolutionary simplicity of his final understanding. The truth is, this recognition of your essential nature as consciousness itself isn't something you achieve through years of effort. It's what you already are beneath all appearances. If something within you resonated with these teachings, if you felt a quiet yes arising as you heard about shifting from person identification to consciousness recognition, it's because truth recognizes itself. Your true nature is already recognizing its reflection in these words. I'd love to continue this journey of discovery with you. If you found value in these insights, subscribe to join our community of consciousness explorers. We're diving deep into these transformative understandings every week, uncovering the practical applications of spiritual truth in everyday life. If you've made it all the way here with me, drop "consciousness recognized" in the comments. I read every comment and would love to hear which aspect of Joel's teaching resonated most deeply with you. And if this conversation opened something new for you, a simple like helps these teachings reach others who might be searching for exactly this understanding. Right over here, you'll find a video exploring how to apply consciousness recognition specifically to health challenges. It's the perfect companion to today's exploration. Click on it now, and let's continue this journey together as we discover how recognizing your true nature transforms every aspect of life. Remember, you are not a person trying to become spiritual. You are spiritual consciousness expressing as a human being. That recognition changes everything. Have you ever wondered if everything you were taught about Jesus has been missing his most profound message? What if the revolutionary spiritual teacher Joel Goldsmith uncovered a truth so transformative that it completely reshapes your relationship with the divine? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might forever change how you understand Jesus' teachings and your own spiritual potential. For centuries, religious institutions have positioned Jesus as someone to worship, someone separate from us, a divine being we must petition for help. But Goldsmith discovered something radically different in Jesus' original teachings. He found that Jesus never intended to be worshipped at all. Instead, Jesus came as a way shower, demonstrating what you are capable of becoming when you recognize the divine nature already within you. Has this ever happened to you? You pray fervently for healing, for abundance, for peace, and nothing seems to change. According to Goldsmith, this happens because we've been taught to approach prayer all wrong. We've been conditioned to beg an external deity for intervention when Jesus himself explicitly stated, "The kingdom of heaven is within you, not within him alone, within you." But before we continue exploring this profound spiritual revelation, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. This fundamental shift in understanding changes everything about your spiritual journey. When Jesus performed miraculous healings, he wasn't showing off supernatural powers that only he possessed. He was demonstrating spiritual laws that you can access right now, in this moment. Every miracle was an invitation to recognize what's possible when you awaken to the Christ consciousness that is your true identity. Traditional Christianity has taught separation. You're the sinner, Jesus is the Savior. God is unreachable except through approved channels. But Goldsmith revealed that this creates a consciousness of lack that actually blocks spiritual demonstration. You can't manifest abundance while believing you're unworthy of divine grace. You can't access healing power while believing you're separate from it. What Jesus actually taught was mystical union, not someday in heaven, but right now, in this very moment. The Christ consciousness isn't something Jesus possessed exclusively 2,000 years ago. It's the eternal truth of being that exists in you this very second. Goldsmith called it recognizing your divine sonship, not earning it through good behavior or correct belief, but simply recognizing what's already true. Now, imagine what would happen if you stopped praying to Jesus and started praying from the Christ consciousness within you. The difference is everything. If you're resonating with these spiritual insights about Christ consciousness, hit subscribe and join our community of seekers uncovering the deeper truths that Jesus actually taught. The difference is everything. When you pray from Christ consciousness rather than to a personal Jesus, you're no longer operating from a place of lack or separation. You're acknowledging the profound truth that the same divine presence that worked through Jesus works through you right now. This hidden truth reveals something revolutionary about every miracle Jesus performed. Each healing, each manifestation of abundance, each moment of profound peace wasn't showing off supernatural powers that only he possessed. Goldsmith realized these were demonstrations of spiritual laws that are accessible to everyone. The blind man who received sight, the lepers who were cleansed, the stormy sea that became calm. These weren't exceptions to natural law, but expressions of spiritual principles that operate consistently when we align with them. Think about the mindset transformation this creates in your spiritual journey. Instead of seeing Jesus' miracles as historical events to marvel at, you can recognize them as practical instructions for your own spiritual awakening. He wasn't saying, "Look what I can do because I'm special." He was saying, "Look what is possible when you recognize the truth of your being." Traditional Christianity has created a framework of separation that actually blocks spiritual demonstration. You're positioned as the sinner, Jesus as the Savior, and God as unreachable except through approved channels. This creates a consciousness of lack that makes it impossible to experience the very union Jesus came to reveal. It's like standing in front of an open door, but never walking through it because you've been told only special people are allowed to enter. Now, I want to go even deeper into this revelation Goldsmith discovered. The impact of this understanding completely reshapes your relationship with prayer itself. When you believe you're separate from God, prayer becomes begging. You plead for intervention, for mercy, for grace. But when you recognize mystical union, not as some future heavenly state but as present reality, prayer becomes recognition. You don't ask for what you already have. You acknowledge what is eternally true despite appearances. This isn't about positive thinking or visualization techniques. It's about a fundamental shift in your awareness of reality. The Christ isn't a person who lived 2,000 years ago. Christ is a state of consciousness that Jesus fully embodied, showing you what you're capable of when you recognize your true nature. When he said, "Before Abraham was, I am," he wasn't speaking of his human personality, but of the eternal Christ consciousness that has no beginning and no end. Every spiritual journey involves moments of profound decision. Will you continue relating to Jesus as someone separate from you, or will you dare to follow his actual instruction to recognize the kingdom of heaven is within you? The transformation happens when you stop looking at Jesus and start looking from where Jesus looked. If this perspective on Christ consciousness is beginning to resonate with your own spiritual intuition, write in the comments, "I recognize the Christ within." Now let's explore what this means for how we approach the challenges of everyday life. Let's explore what this means for how we approach the challenges of everyday life. One of the most profound revelations in Goldsmith's understanding is what he called recognizing your divine sonship. This isn't about gender, but about your relationship to the divine, not as something you earn through good behavior or correct belief, but as something that's already true about you right now. Think about how dramatically this shifts your spiritual mindset. Most of us have been conditioned to see ourselves as somehow separate from the divine, working to become worthy of connection through prayer, meditation, good deeds, or correct beliefs. But what if that entire framework is backward? What if, as Goldsmith discovered, your divine nature isn't something to achieve, but something to recognize? This insight creates a revolutionary shift in how you approach prayer itself. The reason your prayers often haven't worked as you hoped is because you've been praying from a consciousness of need, asking an external God to change your external circumstances. You've been operating from the hidden belief that you're separate from the source of good, that healing and abundance are somewhere out there and must be begged for. True prayer, as Goldsmith revealed, isn't petition at all. It's recognition of what already exists in spiritual reality. You don't beg for healing. You realize there's nothing in spirit that needs healing. The body merely reflects the consciousness you hold. When you shift from asking to acknowledging, from pleading to recognizing, the entire dynamic of your spiritual practice transforms. Behind the scenes of this journey is a profound but simple truth. Consciousness is cause. Whatever consciousness you hold becomes your experience. If you hold a consciousness of separation, lack, and unworthiness, that becomes your reality. But when you recognize your divine sonship, your inherent oneness with the source of all good, your external world begins to reflect that inner awareness. This isn't metaphysical theory, it's practical, spiritual mechanics. Margaret, one of Goldsmith's students, discovered this when facing terminal illness. Instead of continuing to beg God for healing, she practiced recognizing her spiritual wholeness. Within months, her doctors found no trace of the disease they'd declared incurable. She didn't get healed. She recognized she had never been separate from wholeness. The impact of this understanding reaches into every area of life: relationships, finances, purpose, peace. Whatever challenge you're facing right now isn't asking you to pray harder. It's inviting you to recognize deeper truth. The spiritual journey isn't about becoming something new, but uncovering what has always been true beneath the layers of false belief. If you're beginning to feel a resonance with this deeper understanding of prayer as recognition rather than petition, write in the comments, "I am not separate from my good." Now, let's examine how this shift in consciousness transforms our understanding of the miracles Jesus performed. Now let's examine how this shift in consciousness transforms our understanding of the miracles Jesus performed. The fundamental revelation in Goldsmith's teaching was the distinction between praying to and praying from. This subtle difference creates a complete paradigm shift in your spiritual practice. When you pray to Jesus, you automatically position yourself as a supplicant, someone lacking, needing, begging for intervention from a power outside yourself. This creates a mindset of separation that actually blocks spiritual demonstration. It's like standing next to a light switch in a dark room, continuously calling out to someone else to turn on the lights for you. The breakthrough comes when you realize that what Jesus was demonstrating was how to pray from Christ consciousness. He wasn't showing off his unique connection to God. He was revealing the universal blueprint for spiritual awakening. This is why he repeatedly emphasized, "You will do greater things than these." He wasn't being poetic. He was giving practical instructions for accessing the same infinite source he accessed. This revelation leads to an even deeper insight about the meaning of I in Jesus' teachings. When Jesus made statements like, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," or "I am the resurrection and the life," he wasn't referring to his human personality or his physical form. Every time he said "I," he was speaking from and as the Christ consciousness within him, and that same I exists in you. The journey of spiritual awakening involves the profound realization that there are two I's in your experience: your human personality with its history, preferences, and limitations, and the eternal divine identity beneath it. Most of us have been taught to identify exclusively with the personal self, but Jesus was continuously pointing to the universal self that is your true nature. This understanding transforms spiritual practice from theoretical to intensely practical. It's not about abstract theology or complex doctrine. It's about experiential recognition of what's already true. When you face challenges, whether physical illness, financial struggle, or relationship conflict, you're no longer approaching them from a position of weakness, hoping for rescue. You're recognizing them as temporary appearances in consciousness that have no ultimate power over your true identity. Behind the scenes of every spiritual tradition, this is the hidden truth that mystics have always known. The external world is not cause, consciousness is cause. Whatever consciousness you're holding becomes your experience. When you shift from identifying as a separate personality to recognizing yourself as Christ consciousness, having a human experience, everything transforms from the inside out. This isn't about inflating the ego or claiming special status. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's about recognizing that the personal self isn't who you fundamentally are. The revelation that changed countless lives through Goldsmith's teaching was precisely this. Your true identity isn't something you achieve. It's what remains when you let go of everything that isn't really you. If you're feeling a resonance with this deeper understanding of the I within you, type in the comments, "I am not my limitations." Now, let's explore how this understanding transforms our perception of the cross and its spiritual significance. Now let's explore how this understanding transforms our perception of the cross and its spiritual significance. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Goldsmith's teaching was his insight about the crucifixion. For centuries, we've been taught that the cross represents God's punishment for humanity's sin, that Jesus died to appease an angry deity and save us from eternal damnation. This perspective reinforces separation consciousness and keeps us perpetually indebted to an external savior. But Goldsmith uncovered a profound revelation that completely reframes this central Christian symbol. The cross wasn't about punishment at all. It was Jesus demonstrating that even death itself has no power over Christ consciousness. This wasn't a sacrifice to satisfy divine justice. It was a powerful demonstration that your true identity can never be destroyed. Think about the mindset shift this creates. Instead of seeing yourself as a sinner whose debt had to be paid by someone else's suffering, you recognize that Jesus was revealing the indestructible nature of your true identity. He wasn't dying to save you from hell. He was conquering death to show that spirit is eternal. The resurrection wasn't a one-time miracle, but a demonstration of spiritual law, that consciousness transcends physical form. This breakthrough understanding leads directly to what Goldsmith called the practice of the presence of God. This isn't about connecting with a distant deity you petition through prayer. It's about recognizing the presence that is your very being. The divine isn't somewhere else. It's the essence of who you are, beneath the layers of conditioned thinking. The journey behind this practice involves a fundamental shift in how you approach prayer itself. When you grasp that Christ consciousness is your consciousness, prayer transforms from talking to God to listening for the still, small voice within. You're not reaching out to something external. You're tuning into what's already present. This practice creates a revolutionary impact in everyday life. When facing challenges, whether physical illness, financial struggle, or relationship conflict, you're no longer begging an external power for intervention. You're recognizing that in spiritual reality, these problems have no ultimate power. You acknowledge the appearance while resting in the awareness of what's true in consciousness. The revelation here isn't theoretical, it's intensely practical. Margaret, whom we mentioned earlier, didn't get healed of terminal illness by petitioning God more fervently. Her transformation came when she stopped listing her symptoms to God and started sitting in silence, recognizing that in spirit there is no disease. She didn't deny her pain, she simply refused to give it ultimate power. Subscribe now to continue your journey into mystical Christianity and discover more revolutionary teachings that religious institutions have kept hidden for centuries. What makes this practice so powerful is that it doesn't depend on changing external circumstances. It's about recognizing what's already true regardless of appearances. The eternal truth of your being remains unaffected by temporary human conditions. If this understanding of the cross as demonstration rather than punishment resonates with you, write in the comments, "I am eternal spirit." Now, let's discover how these principles transform when applied to real-world healing experiences. Now, let's discover how these principles transform when applied to real-world healing experiences. The power of Goldsmith's teaching becomes evident through the remarkable transformations experienced by his students. Margaret's story illustrates this perfectly. In 1952, she sat in Goldsmith's meditation class with what doctors had definitively labeled an incurable terminal illness. She had tried everything: traditional medical treatments, conventional prayers, confessing every sin she could remember. Yet, her condition continued to deteriorate. What happened next reveals the profound distinction between traditional religious practice and spiritual awakening. Joel looked at Margaret with deep compassion and offered guidance that shocked her. Stop praying for healing and start recognizing wholeness. This wasn't positive thinking or denial of her condition. It was an invitation to shift her consciousness from what appeared to be true to what is spiritually true. For 3 weeks, Margaret committed to this practice. Instead of listing her symptoms to God each morning, she sat in silence, recognizing that in spiritual reality, disease has no ultimate existence. She didn't deny her pain or stop medical treatment. She simply refused to give her condition power over her true identity. The transformation wasn't instantaneous, but unfolded gradually. First, the fear dissolved. Then the pain began to lessen. Within 2 months, doctors could find no trace of the disease they had declared incurable. The breakthrough insight here is that Margaret didn't get healed in the conventional sense. She recognized she had never been separate from wholeness. The body simply reflected the shift in consciousness. This wasn't a miracle that defied spiritual law. It was spiritual law in operation. Another powerful demonstration comes through Robert's journey. He had built his business empire through aggressive competition and ruthless strategy. After his initial skepticism about Goldsmith's teaching, his entire business collapsed. Partners betrayed him, investments failed, and he lost everything. This crisis became the doorway to transformation. Robert began practicing what Goldsmith called living from grace instead of struggle. Each morning for 6 months, he sat in meditation, recognizing divine abundance as the only reality. Instead of scheming to manipulate circumstances, he rested in the awareness of spiritual supply and allowed consciousness to guide his actions. The rebuilding took, in time, 2 years rather than 2 weeks. But what emerged was completely different from what had collapsed. Robert created a business based on cooperation rather than competition, on service rather than exploitation. He prospered beyond his previous success, but this time from a consciousness of abundance rather than fear. These aren't isolated cases. Goldsmith documented dozens of similar transformations over 5 decades of ministry. People with various conditions who experienced profound change, not through external intervention, but through a fundamental shift in consciousness. If you've experienced moments when shifting your mindset completely transformed your circumstances, write in the comments. Consciousness creates experience. Now, let's explore how traditional religious practices can be transformed through this deeper understanding. Elizabeth's story powerfully illustrates this shift. After 40 years of devoted participation in traditional Christianity, attending church every Sunday, serving on committees, teaching Sunday school, she felt spiritually empty. Despite her faithful commitment, her prayers seemed to bounce off the ceiling. Jesus felt distant and unreachable, and though she loved God, she couldn't feel God's presence. Elizabeth discovered Goldsmith's teaching when she was ready to abandon spirituality altogether. What shocked her most was his statement that she'd been taught to worship Jesus instead of learning from Jesus. She'd made him so divine, so separate from human experience, that she'd completely missed his actual message. You have the same access to God that I have. For months, Elizabeth struggled with this idea. Wasn't it blasphemy to claim divine sonship? The breakthrough came during a silent meditation retreat, when she stopped reciting prayers and simply sat in the presence. For the first time in her life, she experienced what Goldsmith called the click, a moment of recognition beyond thought, where she knew, not just believed, but knew that Christ consciousness was her consciousness. The tears that streamed down her face weren't from emotional manipulation or religious fervor. They came from finally experiencing what she'd been seeking for 40 years, direct spiritual experience rather than religious doctrine. Elizabeth didn't leave her church, but her practice transformed completely. She no longer approached prayer as petitioning an external deity, but as recognizing the presence within. This revelation leads to an even more practical teaching Goldsmith offered, recognizing the nothingness of error. When facing any problem, Whether illness, financial struggle, or relationship conflict, our natural response is to fight it, fix it, or pray for its removal. But Goldsmith discovered this approach actually gives the problem power by treating it as something real that needs to be overcome. Instead, he taught a revolutionary practice, recognizing that in spiritual reality, the problem doesn't exist. This isn't denial of appearance or positive thinking. It's recognition of what's true in consciousness. When you face a financial crisis, traditional religion says pray to God for money. Positive thinking says visualize abundance. Goldsmith taught something radically different. Recognize that in spirit there is no lack, period. This mindset shift requires spiritual maturity. You're not pretending the problem isn't there. You're refusing to give it ultimate reality. You acknowledge the appearance while recognizing that appearances are temporary and consciousness is cause. The journey of transformation happens when you hold both simultaneously. The bank account shows zero, but spiritual reality knows nothing of limitation. If you've ever experienced a moment where you stopped fighting against a problem and instead found peace by changing your perspective about it, write in the comments, I've experienced the nothingness of error. Now let's address the obstacles that often arise when first practicing these spiritual principles. Here's a revelation that Goldsmith shared with his students that few spiritual teachers have the courage to acknowledge. When you first begin practicing Christ consciousness, your circumstances might actually get worse before they improve. This isn't a sign of failure, it's evidence of progress. Think about what happens when you decide to clean out an attic that's been neglected for decades. The initial phase creates more mess and chaos than when you started. Items that were hidden in corners get pulled into the open. Dust that had settled gets stirred up. Someone walking in during this process might think you're making things worse, not better. This is precisely what happens in consciousness. When you begin this spiritual journey, you're essentially cleaning house. Everything false in your life is being revealed so truth can replace it. Relationships that were maintained through pretense begin to crack. Financial situations built on fear rather than true principles become unstable. Health conditions that were suppressed rather than addressed might surface. Sarah's experience perfectly illustrates this hidden truth. She practiced Goldsmith's teaching faithfully for 3 months and watched her life seemingly fall apart. Her marriage hit crisis. Her business struggled, her health declined. When she called Goldsmith in desperation, his response was unexpected. Everything false in your life is being revealed so truth can replace it. Don't abandon the practice now. Go deeper into Christ consciousness. This is the crossroads where most people quit. They interpret the upheaval as evidence that the spiritual practice isn't working, so they return to familiar patterns, begging God to fix the chaos rather than recognizing the transformation taking place. The mindset breakthrough comes when you understand that this chaos is actually progress. Consciousness is cleaning house, and everything not built on spiritual truth must crumble, so what's real can emerge. The ultimate revelation of this spiritual path is what Goldsmith called becoming a transparent consciousness. After working through the obstacles and continuing to practice presence, you eventually become so established in Christ consciousness that you become a healing presence without doing anything. People feel peace around you. Situations resolve when you enter them, not because you're special, but because consciousness operating through you recognizes only spiritual reality. Joel reached this state after decades of practice. He would simply sit in a room and be present, and people reported physical healings, emotional breakthroughs, and spiritual awakenings. He wasn't doing anything to them. His consciousness was simply so clear of personal agenda that divine consciousness could operate unobstructed. This is what Jesus actually demonstrated. Not supernatural powers exclusive to him, but complete transparency to Christ consciousness through persistent recognition of what's already true. The journey isn't about becoming something new. It's about uncovering what you've always been beneath the layers of false belief. If you've experienced moments where your presence seemed to bring peace or healing to a situation without your conscious effort, share in the comments. I've glimpsed transparent consciousness. Now let's explore the practical methods Goldsmith taught for developing this consciousness in everyday life. The journey we've explored together through Goldsmith's profound understanding of Christ consciousness isn't just theoretical. It's an invitation to transformation. What he discovered after 50 years of practice and teaching comes down to this simple truth. Your entire spiritual journey is about recognizing what's already true. You're not becoming divine, you're recognizing divinity as your nature. As you begin to integrate these principles into your own practice, remember that the process isn't linear. You'll have moments of profound recognition, followed by periods of forgetting. The practice is returning to presence each time you realize you've left it. This is the essence of the spiritual journey, not arriving, but continuously returning to the truth of your being. If these insights have resonated with you on your spiritual path, I'd love for you to be part of our community of seekers. Subscribe to this channel for more explorations of mystical Christianity and the deeper teachings that transform consciousness. Your journey matters, and together we can uncover these hidden truths that religious institutions have often obscured. If you've made it to the end of this exploration, type "Christ consciousness is my consciousness" in the comments below. I read every comment and love connecting with those who are walking this path of spiritual awakening. And if this message has helped illuminate your understanding of Jesus' true teaching, let me know with a like. It helps others find this content who might be seeking the same truths you are. There's a video right here that explores how to practice the presence in your daily life, the practical application of everything we've discussed today. Click and continue with me over there as we deepen this journey of awakening together. Remember, you're not alone on this path. The same Christ consciousness that Jesus demonstrated is your consciousness too, not someday, but right now in this eternal moment. Close your eyes for just a moment and tell me, where is God right now? Point to the place. Show me the direction. You cannot, and that is the first step toward truly understanding God. For what you seek is not distant, not absent, not waiting to be found. It is closer than your breath, more intimate than your own thoughts, and it has never been separate from you for even an instant. Today, we dissolve the greatest illusion humanity has ever believed. 5 keynotes for when you truly understand God. God as infinite, invisible presence. Understanding that God is not a person, place, or thing, but the infinite, invisible consciousness that constitutes all being. The dissolution of personal sense. Recognition that spiritual awakening occurs when we cease seeking God out there and realize the kingdom of God is within our own consciousness. Living by grace, not effort. The shift from attempting to demonstrate God through human effort to resting in the awareness that God's grace is already fully present. Beyond duality into oneness, transcending the belief in 2 powers, good and evil, to recognize only one infinite power expressing itself as all reality. Practical mysticism in daily life, how this understanding transforms everyday experience from struggle into communion with the divine presence. Opening hook, pause, then speak slowly with quiet authority. Close your eyes for just a moment and tell me, where is God right now? Point to the place. Show me the direction. You cannot, and that is the first step toward truly understanding God. For what you seek is not distant, not absent, not waiting to be found. It is closer than your breath, more intimate than your own thoughts, and it has never been separate from you for even an instant. Today, we dissolve the greatest illusion humanity has ever believed. Speech. When you truly understand God now, let us settle into this moment together. What I am about to share with you is not new truth. Truth is never new, it is eternal, and it has been waiting patiently within your own consciousness, waiting for the moment of recognition. When you truly understand God, something quite remarkable happens. You stop seeking. Not because you have given up, but because you have awakened to the supreme fact that there is nothing to seek. The spiritual journey, you see, is not a journey towards something. It is a journey of removing the veils of false belief that have hidden what has always been present. Most of humanity has been taught to pray to a God somewhere beyond themselves, a God in heaven, a God who must be pleased, petitioned, or persuaded. But this is not understanding God. This is creating an image, a concept, a mental idol, and no matter how beautiful that image may be, it is still finite, still limited, still separate from you. When you truly understand God, you realize that God is not a being among beings. God is being itself. God is the infinite, invisible consciousness that is expressing as all that exists. Right now, in this very moment, that which you call God is the consciousness with which you are aware of these words. It is the life force animating your body. It is the intelligence organizing every cell, every breath, every heartbeat without your conscious direction. Listen carefully. God is not something you will find tomorrow through more prayer, more discipline, more religious practice. God is what you are discovering when you become still enough to recognize the presence that has been here all along. Scripture tells us, "Be still and know that I am God." Not be busy and achieve God, not be anxious and earn God. Be still, and in that stillness, know. This understanding changes everything. When you know that God is the infinite presence within your own consciousness, you cease living from a sense of separation. You no longer feel you must bridge a gap between yourself and the divine. You realize there is no gap. There has never been a gap. The kingdom of God is within you, not will be, not should be, not might be, if you are good enough, but right now, fully present and complete. And here is where practical mysticism begins. You see, this is not philosophy meant only for mountaintops and monasteries. This understanding must transform how you live Monday morning. When you truly understand God, you approach every challenge differently. Where before you might have struggled and strained, trying to make something happen through personal effort, now you learn to rest in awareness. You learn to let the infinite intelligence that governs the entire universe govern your affairs as well. Does this mean you do nothing? No. It means you do everything from a different consciousness. You act, but not from anxiety or fear. You move forward, but not from a belief in your own limitation. You work, you create, you engage with life, but all of it flows from an inner communion with the presence that knows what you need before you ask, that has already prepared the way, that is even now expressing itself as the answer to what appears as your problem. When you truly understand God, you also transcend the belief in duality, the belief in two powers. You recognize that there is only one infinite power, one presence, one reality. What we call evil, disease, lack, or limitation are not actual powers opposing God. They are simply the shadows that disappear when light is recognized. They are the nightmares that vanish when you awaken. This does not mean you deny appearances. You simply refuse to give them ultimate reality. You learn to look through the appearance to the truth that lies behind it. Where human sense sees discord, spiritual awareness perceives divine order. Where the world sees lack, consciousness illumined by this understanding sees infinite abundance. Where medicine sees disease, the awakened soul recognizes only life eternal, flowing, expressing, being. Now, I must tell you, this understanding does not come through the intellect alone. You can memorize these words, you can agree with these principles, and still not have truly understood God. True understanding is an experience. It is that moment when something within you clicks into place, and you know, not because someone told you, not because you read it in Scripture, but because consciousness itself has revealed it to you. This is why we practice meditation, not to achieve something, not to become spiritual, but to create the inner quiet where this recognition can occur. In that silence, when thoughts cease their endless commentary, when the personal sense of I steps aside even for a moment, the infinite I Am reveals itself. And once revealed, even briefly, you are never quite the same again. Living from this understanding requires what we might call spiritual integrity. You cannot understand God on Sunday and then live Monday through Saturday as though God were absent. You cannot affirm infinite supply and then worry about money. You cannot declare God's presence and then feel lonely or afraid. This is not judgment. It is simply recognition that consciousness is demonstrable. What you truly understand, you will demonstrate. And so we practice living in remembrance. Throughout the day we pause, we return to that inner sanctuary where God is not a concept, but a felt presence. We rest in the awareness that right here, right now, infinity is present. We let that presence inform our decisions, guide our words, govern our reactions. We become gradually less reactive to the world and more responsive to the spirit within. When you truly understand God, gratitude becomes your natural state. Not gratitude that God gave you something, for that still implies separation, but gratitude that recognizes you are living, moving, and having your being in God, and God is living, moving, and having its being as you. This is the great mystery, not that you will someday unite with God, but that you and the Father are one, have always been one, and in truth there is no you. God, there is only the one infinite life expressing itself. My friends, I leave you with this. Stop seeking God as though God were lost. God cannot be lost, for God is all there is. Instead, begin recognizing God. Recognize that presence in the silence of your meditation. Recognize it in the beauty of creation. Recognize it in the intelligence of your own being. Recognize it in the love you feel for another, in the creativity that flows through you, in the peace that passes understanding. This is not a journey of distance but of depth. This is not achievement but recognition. This is not becoming but being. When you truly understand God, you understand yourself. And in understanding yourself as you truly are infinite, eternal, perfect consciousness, you find yourself living in a kingdom that has always been present, always been perfect, always been yours. Be still now, and in that stillness know, not with your mind, but with the very consciousness that you are. God is not waiting for you to understand. God is the understanding itself, awakening within you as you, to its own eternal presence. This is the truth. This has always been the truth. And this truth, recognized and lived, will set you free. God as infinite, invisible presence. When we speak of God as infinite, invisible presence, we are moving beyond all theological concepts and religious imagery into the realm of direct spiritual perception. God is not a magnified human being sitting on a throne somewhere in a distant heaven. God is not a person who thinks, decides, rewards or punishes. These are anthropomorphic projections that keep us bound to a finite sense of the divine. The infinite, invisible presence that is God constitutes the very essence of all that exists. It is the consciousness that animates all life, the intelligence that governs every atom and galaxy, the love that holds all creation in perfect harmony. This presence is invisible because it is not material, not physical, not tangible to the five senses. Yet it is more real than anything we can see, touch, or measure. Consider for a moment. You cannot see consciousness, yet you know it exists because you are conscious. You cannot touch intelligence, yet you recognize it operating in yourself and throughout nature. You cannot weigh or measure love, yet you have felt its transforming power. These invisible realities are more fundamental than the visible world they create and sustain. This understanding revolutionizes your spiritual life. You stop looking for God in external forms, places, or experiences. You cease trying to contact a deity separate from yourself. Instead, you begin to recognize that the very awareness with which you seek God is God seeking to know itself through you. The consciousness reading these words right now is not separate from divine consciousness. It is that consciousness, individualized, expressed, made manifest. When you truly grasp this, prayer transforms from petition to communion, from asking to listening, from speaking to God to letting God speak as your own deepest awareness. You rest in the infinite, invisible presence that has never been absent, that cannot be absent, because it is the very substance and reality of your being. Expanded 5 keynotes for when you truly understand God. 1. God as infinite, invisible presence. When we speak of God as infinite, invisible presence, we are moving beyond all theological concepts and religious imagery into the realm of direct spiritual perception. God is not a magnified human being sitting on a throne somewhere in a distant heaven. God is not a person who thinks, decides, rewards, or punishes. These are anthropomorphic projections that keep us bound to a finite sense of the divine. The infinite, invisible presence that is God constitutes the very essence of all that exists. It is the consciousness that animates all life, the intelligence that governs every atom and galaxy, the love that holds all creation in perfect harmony. This presence is invisible because it is not material, not physical, not tangible to the 5 senses. Yet it is more real than anything we can see, touch, or measure. Consider for a moment, you cannot see consciousness, yet you know it exists because you are conscious. You cannot touch intelligence, yet you recognize it operating in yourself and throughout nature. You cannot weigh or measure love, yet you have felt its transforming power. These invisible realities are more fundamental than the visible world they create and sustain. This understanding revolutionizes your spiritual life. You stop looking for God in external forms, places, or experiences. You cease trying to contact a deity separate from yourself. Instead, you begin to recognize that the very awareness with which you seek God is God seeking to know itself through you. The consciousness reading these words right now is not separate from divine consciousness. It is that consciousness, individualized, expressed, made manifest. When you truly grasp this, prayer transforms from petition to communion, from asking to listening, from speaking to God to letting God speak as your own deepest awareness. You rest in the infinite, invisible presence that has never been absent, that cannot be absent because it is the very substance and reality of your being. 2. The dissolution of personal sense. The personal sense is perhaps the greatest barrier to understanding God. It is the deeply ingrained belief that you are a separate, isolated individual, cut off from God, from others, from the universe itself. This sense of separation creates the illusion that you must somehow bridge the gap between yourself and the divine through religious practices, good deeds, or spiritual achievements. But when you truly understand God, this personal sense begins to dissolve. You recognize that what you have called yourself is not the limited body-mind organism struggling through life. Your true identity is the infinite consciousness expressing itself as this particular point of awareness. You are not a human being trying to become spiritual. You are spiritual being, temporarily expressing as human experience. This dissolution does not mean you lose your individuality or become some sort of cosmic blob. Rather, you discover your true individuality as a unique expression of the infinite. Just as each wave is individual, yet never separate from the ocean, you are individually expressed yet never separate from the one divine consciousness. Your thoughts, talents, experiences, and perspective remain unique, but they are now understood as the infinite individualizing itself. The practical implications are profound. When personal sense dissolves, so does personal responsibility for making things happen spiritually. You realize you cannot, through human effort alone, heal disease, demonstrate supply, or achieve enlightenment. These are the activities of God, of infinite consciousness, operating through you as you surrender the illusion of separate selfhood. This is not passivity, but the highest form of action that flows from divine impulse rather than human anxiety. You become a transparency through which the infinite expresses itself. Your life becomes less about what you can accomplish and more about what the infinite accomplishes as you. The burden of personal sense lifts, and you discover the lightness of living as an instrument of the divine. Living by grace, not effort. The spiritual journey for most seekers begins with tremendous effort. We pray harder, meditate longer, study more scripture, attend more services, practice more disciplines. We believe that through these human efforts, we will somehow earn God's favor, achieve enlightenment, or demonstrate spiritual power. But this approach, while sincere, rests on a fundamental misunderstanding. Grace is the recognition that God's infinite presence, power, and provision are already fully present. They are not earned, achieved, or demonstrated through human effort. They are the eternal reality of being itself. When you truly understand God, you understand grace, not as a reward for good behavior, but as the very nature of divine being continuously expressing itself. Living by grace means shifting from doing to being, from achieving to receiving, from struggle to rest. It means recognizing that the healing you seek is already present as God's perfect expression. The supply you need is already provided in the infinite abundance that is God's nature. The guidance you require is already available as the divine intelligence within your own consciousness. This does not eliminate action from your life. You still work, create, serve, and engage with the world. But the motivation and source of your action transform completely. Instead of acting from fear, lack, or personal ambition, you act from an inner prompting, a divine impulse that moves through you. Your work becomes worship, your daily activities become expressions of grace flowing into manifestation. The freedom this brings cannot be overstated. You are released from the exhausting burden of trying to make spiritual principles work through personal effort. You discover that spiritual principles are not techniques you apply, but truths you recognize. As you rest in this recognition, divine grace flows naturally, effortlessly demonstrating itself as health, harmony, abundance, and peace in your experience. Beyond duality into oneness, perhaps the most radical aspect of truly understanding God is the transcendence of duality, the deeply conditioned belief that the universe operates through two powers, good and evil, constantly in opposition. Most religious teaching reinforces this duality, presenting God as good power fighting against evil power, light battling darkness, health opposing disease, abundance contending with lack. But when you truly understand God, you recognize that there is only one power, one presence, one reality. God is not one half of a cosmic conflict. God is the infinite totality of all that exists. What we perceive as evil, disease, lack, or discord are not actual opposing powers. They are misperceptions, the result of viewing infinite reality through the distorting lens of material sense and human belief. Consider an illustration. When you have a nightmare, the monsters and dangers seem absolutely real within the dream. They appear to have power to harm you. But when you awaken, you realize there were no monsters, no dangers, no actual threats. There was only your consciousness creating dream images. The monsters never had real power because they never had real existence. Similarly, when consciousness awakens to its true nature as infinite, indivisible oneness, what appeared as opposing powers are recognized as shadows without substance. Disease is not a power opposed to health, it is the absence of recognized wholeness. Lack is not a force opposed to abundance, it is the failure to recognize infinite supply. Evil is not an entity opposed to good, it is the ignorance of the allness of God. This understanding transforms how you meet every challenge. You do not fight disease, lack, or discord as though they were real powers. Instead, you turn to the recognition of the one power, the one presence, the one reality. In that recognition, the appearance changes, not because you overcame an opposing force, but because you awakened from the dream of duality into the reality of oneness. Practical mysticism in daily life. The ultimate test of spiritual understanding is not how elevated your consciousness becomes during meditation, but how that understanding transforms your daily experience. Practical mysticism bridges the seeming gap between spiritual truth and everyday living, demonstrating that understanding God is not an escape from life, but a complete transformation of how life is lived. When you truly understand God, Monday morning looks different. You approach your work not as secular activity separate from spiritual life, but as the arena where consciousness expresses itself. Every task becomes an opportunity for divine intelligence to flow through you. Every interaction becomes a chance to recognize the one presence appearing as diverse individuals. Every challenge becomes an invitation to remember the infinite power that constitutes your true being. Practical mysticism means maintaining your awareness of God's presence throughout the day, not just during designated spiritual times. It means pausing before responding to circumstances to remember what you know in your highest consciousness. It means bringing that awareness of oneness, completeness, and divine government into your relationships, your finances, your health concerns, your creative endeavors. This is not about applying spiritual techniques to get what you want. It is about living from the consciousness that recognizes what already is, that you already dwell in the kingdom of God. That infinite intelligence already governs your affairs. That divine love already connects you to all good. From this consciousness, Your actions, words, and decisions naturally align with spiritual truth. The transformation extends to how you perceive others. When you understand God as the only presence and power, you begin to see through human appearances to the divine reality of everyone you encounter. The difficult person becomes an opportunity to recognize God appearing in a form you did not expect. The stranger becomes the infinite expressing itself in unfamiliar individuality. Practical mysticism also transforms your relationship with material things. You recognize that the physical world is not separate from or opposed to spiritual reality. Matter is simply spirit made visible, the invisible divine presence taking tangible form. Your body, your home, your resources are all expressions of the infinite appearing as your experience. This sanctifies all of life, eliminating the false division between sacred and secular, spiritual and material. And so, my dear friends, we come to the heart of the matter, the place where all words must fall silent and experience alone can speak. When you truly understand God, you discover that this understanding is not the end of a journey, but the beginning of a new way of living. Every moment becomes fresh, alive with divine possibility. Every breath becomes a prayer of recognition. Every experience becomes an opportunity to witness the infinite expressing itself as the particular circumstances of your life. You will leave this place today and return to what the world calls ordinary life. You will face the same situations, the same relationships, the same challenges that awaited you before you came here. But you need not face them in the same way. You need not meet them from the same consciousness, for something within you has been stirred, awakened, reminded of a truth that has always been present but perhaps forgotten. The understanding we have touched upon today is not mine to give you, for it is already yours. It is not something you must acquire, for it is what you already are. I have simply held up a mirror, and in that mirror, consciousness has recognized itself. God has become aware of God. The infinite has remembered its own presence within what appeared as limitation. Now comes the practice, the gentle discipline of remembrance. When anxiety arises, pause and remember, there is only one presence, and it is perfect peace. When lack appears, stop and recall, there is only one reality, and it is infinite abundance. When discord manifests, be still and recognize there is only one power, and it is divine harmony. This is not pretending, not denial, not positive thinking. This is the patient, persistent return to truth until truth becomes your natural state of consciousness. There will be moments when the old sense of separation returns, when you forget and slip back into believing you are a limited being in a material world, separate from God and from good. Do not despair in these moments. Do not judge yourself as a spiritual failure. Simply recognize what has happened, smile gently at the old habit of thought, and return once more to the truth. Each return strengthens your conscious awareness. Each remembrance deepens your realization. Understand this clearly. You are not trying to become something you are not. You are not attempting to reach a God who is distant. You are simply learning to be consciously aware of what has always been true. You are awakening from the dream of separation into the reality of oneness. This awakening may happen suddenly, in one brilliant flash of recognition, or it may unfold gradually, like the dawn that comes softly but surely, dissolving darkness without struggle or strain. Be patient with yourself, but also be persistent. Give time each day to silence, to meditation, to that inner communion where words cease and presence speaks. In that silence, you are not creating anything new. You are not making God appear. You are simply becoming still enough to recognize what has never been absent, and in that recognition, all the false beliefs, all the illusions of separation, all the fears and limitations that have bound you begin to lose their power. Let me say this with utmost clarity: the understanding of God we have explored today is not a belief system to adopt, not a philosophy to defend, not a religion to join. It is a living realization that transforms everything it touches. It is consciousness awakening to its own infinite nature. It is love recognizing itself as the only reality. It is peace knowing itself as the substance of all being. And when this understanding becomes your living experience, you become a light in the world, not through effort or intention, but simply by being what you are. Others will sense something different about you, though they may not be able to name it. Your presence will bring peace because you are resting in peace. Your words will carry healing because you know there is nothing to heal except false belief. Your life will demonstrate harmony because you have ceased believing in opposing powers. This is not spiritual pride. This is simply the natural outcome of understanding God. Just as the sun cannot help but give light and warmth, consciousness that knows itself as infinite cannot help but express wholeness, abundance, love, and peace. You do not make this happen. You simply allow it to flow by removing the obstacles of false belief. So go now into your world, carrying with you this seed of understanding. Water it with meditation, nourish it with remembrance, protect it from the weeds of doubt and fear, and trust that the infinite intelligence that grows entire forests from tiny seeds will grow this understanding within you until it fills your entire consciousness and transforms your entire experience. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. The same infinite presence that is awakening as your consciousness is awakening as all consciousness. The same truth that is being revealed to you is being revealed throughout the universe, for there is only one consciousness, one presence, one God individualizing, expressing, knowing itself as all that exists. When you truly understand God, you understand that this moment, right here, right now, is already complete, already perfect, already whole. Nothing is missing, nothing needs to be added. The kingdom of God is at hand, not tomorrow, not after more spiritual work, not when you finally get it right, but now fully present, waiting only for recognition. Long, reverent pause, may you live in this recognition, may you rest in this understanding, may you awaken each day to the wonder of infinite presence expressing as your life, and may you discover, again and again, that what you have been seeking has been here all along, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, the eternal, infinite, loving presence that is God, being itself as you. This is the truth. Live it, be it, for you are it, and you have never been anything else. Silence, thank you, and God bless you, which is to say, may you recognize the blessing that you already are,